friend, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Afrik-Ann. In this channel I bring you tutorials on dressmaking, bag making and fashion accessories. Today's video is going to be on how to make this beautiful reversible bucket hat. You can see how beautiful it's looking. It's a reversible bucket hat. That means you can wear either ways. You can wear this part, you can turn it over to the other side. You can see how beautiful it's looking. So today's tutorial is going to be on how to make this beautiful bucket hat. So I would like to take a moment to appreciate my returning subscribers, and if you are new to this channel, I want to say thank you for stopping by, and please consider hitting the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my beautiful tutorials. So without further ado, let's get started with today's tutorial. To make this bucket hat, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to draft my pattern on my pattern papers first before transferring my patterns to my fabric. So the first step to take is to measure your head circumference, as you can see on the diagram on the screen. So grab your tape and measure your head circumference round. So after measuring your head circumference, whatever thing you have, divide it by 4 inches. So the head circumference I'm going to be working with is 22 inches. So 22 inches divided by 4 is 5.5 inches. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to fold this into 2 first, and I'm going to fold into 2 again. After folding my pattern paper into 4, I'm going to start placing my measurements. The measurement I'm working with is 22 inches. That is the head circumference I'm working with. So 22 inches divided by 4 is 5.5 inches. So go ahead and divide your head circumference into 4. So whatever thing you have is what we are going to be working with. So 22 inches divided by 4 is 5.5 inches. So I'm just going to place my tape on curve like this, using the 5.5 inches I got. So after placing my tape on curve like this, I'm going to mark out where I have my 5 inches. So I'm going to be using this to form an arc from this point to this point. So after marking this out, I hope you can see this clearly. Let me use my marker to make this very clear. After marking this out, I'll go ahead and cut this out just the way you cut your flare. That is how we'll be cutting this. After cutting this out, I'm going to label this A. I'm going to keep this aside. So this is going to serve as the crown of my bucket hat. So the next thing, I'm going to go back to my pattern paper, and I'll be measuring half of my head circumference. The head circumference I'm working with is 22 inches. 22 inches divided by 2 is 11 inches. So I'm just going to mark out 11 inches, and I'm going to be using 3 inches for the height of this cap. So I'm going to be marking out 11 inches, which is half of my head circumference, by 3 inches. After cutting this out, I'm going to pick my pattern like this, and I'll fold first into 2 equal parts, and I'll fold again into 2 equal parts like this. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to open this up so you can see some lines in between my patterns. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to cut these lines. I'm just going to cut these lines, but I'm not going to get to the end. Slashing this pattern, I'm going to place it on another plain pattern, and I'll be holding this down with my tape. On each of this opening, I'm just going to open this up by 1/2 inch, and I'm going to tape it down. I'm going to open this up by 1/2 inch again. This is what is known as slash and spread. On each of this space, I have 1/2 inch space in between my pattern. So after slashing and spreading this, I'll just go ahead and cut this out. So I'm just going to remove this white paper. So this is of no use to me again. I'm going to toss this aside, and I'm going to label this part B. To get my part C, which is going to serve as the flare, or you can call it the brim of the cap, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to measure the wider part of this part B. So I'm going to measure the wider part of my part B, and what I have is exactly 12.5 inches. So I'm going to keep this aside. I'll go back to my pattern paper. I'm going to mark 12.5 inches. I'll be using 3 inches again for the height. So after cutting this out, I'm going to be folding this into 3 equal parts. I'm going to fold this 1, 2, and 3. So after folding, I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to be cutting this on all the places I have these lines. Just the way we did for the part B. I'm not going to take my scissors to the end of this. I'm going to be using slash and spread method on this again. So after slashing this, I'm going to place it on my pattern paper again. I'm going to tape this on my pattern paper like this, just the way I did on the part B. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to be slashing this by 0.75, and I'll tape. So after opening and spreading this by 0.75 on each of these, I also went ahead to tape this down with my sellotape. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'll go ahead and cut this out. So after cutting, I'm going to take this out. And I'm going to label this C. So these are basically all the patterns I'm going to be needing to make this bucket hat. So this is going to serve as my crown. This is going to serve as the body of the bucket hat, and this is going to serve as the brim. After cutting out my patterns, the next thing is to transfer my patterns on my fabric. I'm going to be using these 2 fabrics because it's a reversible bucket hat, meaning you can wear either sides of the hat. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to place this on fold. I'm just going to place this on fold. I'm going to place my part C on my fabric, and I'm going to be marking 1/2 inch around my pattern for my sewing allowance. As you can see, I marked 1/2 inch around my pattern except this part because it's on fold. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'll go ahead and cut this out. So as you can see, I've used my patterns to cut out my fabric, leaving 1/2 inch allowance all around it, except this part that is unfold. So I'm just going to take this out. So I'll be using this to cut on my Ankara fabric. I'm going to place my Ankara fabric on hold, and I'm going to pick one of these. I'm going to cut exactly this measurement. I'm not going to add any allowance on this because I've already added all the allowances I'm going to be needing for this cap. So I'll just go ahead and cut out exactly the same pattern on my Ankara fabric without adding any allowance. So after cutting, this is what I have. I'll be needing my interface at this point. So this is my interface. So you can use hair stay or light gum stay. So I'll be ironing my Ankara fabric on this interface. So I'm not going to be adding interface on my jean fabric because this is thick. But if you're using two light fabrics, go ahead and iron interface on the two different fabrics. But in this case, I'm going to be ironing only the Ankara fabric on my interface. So I'm going ahead to iron my interface on my Ankara fabric. So this is my pattern A, B, and C. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pick this pattern A. So this is a crown of my bucket hat. This is the top of my bucket hat. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pick this pattern. This is the crown of the bucket hat. This is the top of the bucket hat. I'm just going to bend it like this and notch a little. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pick my B pattern. So I'm going to be fixing it from this part. You can see how curved it's looking. So this shorter part is going to come round this. So before fixing this, I'm going to take out 1/2 inch. So this is my 1/2 inch for my sewing allowance. So on this part where I notched, so I'm going to place this. Remember, my 1/2 inch is still out for my sewing allowance. I'm not going to start from this place. I'm going to start after 1/2 inch. So I'm going to place this like so, right side facing right side. So I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew this round to the crown of my cap by 1/2 inch. And I'm going to repeat the same thing on my jean fabric. So I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and pull this together. So I'm going ahead to sew the body of the bucket hat to the top of the hat, leaving this place where I have my sewing allowance open. I also went ahead to do the same thing. I also did the same thing on the jean fabric. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to be making some notches around this. So I'm just going to notch this. So after notching, it's time to fix the brim of our bucket hat. So I'm just going to turn this over to the right side. So I'm going to pick the brim. So I'll be fixing it from this curved part, right side facing right side. So I'm just going to pick this, and I'm going to place it right side facing right side. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew this by 1/2 inch. I'm going to sew this round by 1/2 inch, and I'm going to do the same on the jean fabric. After sewing my brim to my cap, I'll go ahead and make some little notches around this. After making my notches, I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to close this up. I'll bring this together and sew by 1/2 inch. After closing this end, just go ahead and turn this out. So after turning out, the next thing to do is to bring the right side facing right side. So I'm just going to open this up like this, and I'll come to this part. I'm going to open this up. And I'm going to bring them together. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to be sewing this by 1/2 inch. So I'm not going to close this up to the end. I'm going to be leaving at least 2 inches opening. I'm going to be leaving 2 inches opening that I'm going to use to turn this out. After sewing the two parts together, remember I still left an opening of 2 inches for turning out my cap. So before turning out my cap, I'll go ahead and make some notches around my cap. After making my notches, I'll go ahead and turn this out. After turning this out, I'm going to be giving this a very good press. After giving this a very good press, you can see how beautiful it's looking. So for this opening, remember this opening we left to turn our cap out, I'm going to be closing it up with my hemming gum. After giving this a very good press, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'll be sewing some lines. I'll be making some knit top stitch on this round the brim. I'll be making about 3 to 4 lines round the brim. As you can see, my hat is ready and looking so beautiful. This is the Ankara part looking so sweet, and this is the other side, the denim side. So you can wear any side of your choice. The both parts are looking so beautiful. This is basically all for this bucket hat. Let me know what you think about this tutorial in the comment section. Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. Thank you, and see you in my next video. Bye.